if the Raptors played the Nets in the first round, Kyrie couldn't play in any of the games. And I was joking with somebody. I was like, I'm looking forward to seeing the rationale that the league announces that series is going to actually be played in Buffalo and Newark.
Hey, Tampa treated the Raptors well. Send them back there for that series.
So I still, I have no reason to say this, but I just suspect, and I think Kyrie does too, just like he waited out everything.
And since you haven't asked, Nets Raptors could be for the 8th spot in the Eastern Conference in the play-in tournament, because as of right now, the Brooklyn Nets are most likely to be the 7th seed playing in the first round, the Cleveland Cavaliers.
That's a little harsh.
Well, I mean, they have a better than 10% chance of finishing anywhere from 4th to 8th, and they've got a 16% chance of finishing 6th and an 18% chance of finishing 7th. So, and a chance of finishing 8th. So, I mean, there's basically a 1 in 4 chance they finish in the play-in tournament.
I can understand why the computers are confused by them. I can understand why they look at them and say they're actually not that good, because when we judge them on what they can be. The computers judge them on what they have.
They could also lose a lot of games the next 6 weeks. I mean, if James Harden misses some time with a hamstring issue, I mean, the rest of this roster is not very good. Like, they're without their 4 best players right now, Joe Harris and the big 3. So you take the 4 best players off a team, that's not going to be a very good team.
So Woj reported on Wednesday that the Nets are pretty much saying we're not going to trade James Harden because there's been some discussion about, since he didn't sign his extension, whether he may look to go to the Sixers in the offseason. From what I'm told, earlier, I don't know when it was, but Joe Tsai, the owner, and Sean Marks, the GM, sat down with James when he didn't extend his contract and kind of wanted to know where he was. So, they checked in with him on his contentment and happiness level. And by the way, as you would want to, if the guy turned down $161 million 3-year extension, and you traded 3 firsts and your young players and swaps and everything for him. And so from what I am told, what James said was, I'm happy here. This was a decision based purely on financials. And the Nets are satisfied with that, and they're going to ignore the noise. Now, let me tell you what he means by financials. So Bobby Marks went over this with us. We're actually on this all email chain because Bobby Marks is the greatest. He lists the 5 options that James Harden has for this summer. Option 1, if he opts in, because he's got a player option, if he opts into his $47 million contract, he can then extend with Brooklyn for 4 more years, which he couldn't have done in the fall, which is what he was saying his motivation was, not because he was upset. Although how could you not be upset by the way things have gone? But I'm not saying he'd leave, but so that would be a 5-year, $270 million total contract, including his option. So he picks up his option, extends 4 more years, 270. Pretty good. Not sure how I feel about James Harden in 3 years at that money, but what are they going to do? Say no? Option 2, he declines his option, becomes an unrestricted free agent. He can sign a 5-year, $269 million contract with the Nets. Essentially the same thing within a couple $100,000 difference. Option 3, he declines his option with Brooklyn, becomes an unrestricted free agent, and he goes out somewhere else. He can sign a 4-year, $200 million contract to a team with cap space. That's the max if he signs.
James Harden heading back to Oklahoma City. Forget the Maury reunion. He's back with the Thunder.
Right. So that maneuver would, in theory, cost him $70 million in guaranteed money, assuming that the Nets were willing to offer him a full 5-year guarantee.
But he'd get to live in Bricktown.
So right now, there's only 3 teams that have the cap space to sign him as an outright free agent. Oklahoma City, Detroit, Orlando, and San Antonio.
He said 3. He named 4. Wendy's math is struggling.
4. Sorry. You're right. I don't think any of them are on the list for James Harden. And so that's why people are talking about sign and trades. Could it be a sign and trade for Ben Simmons, et cetera, et cetera? Option 4. If he wants to do nothing in Brooklyn this offseason and wants to go to Philadelphia, his best option would just be to pick up his option and get traded. And then he would be able to go to Philadelphia. And in this particular case, there would not be a hard salary cap on the 76ers. Because if you did a sign and trade, then the Sixers would be hard capped and it would be very difficult to execute the trade and fill out the roster. So he would pick up his option with a demand and understanding he'd be going to Philadelphia. And then he could sign that same $223 million extension with the 76ers 6 months after the trade. So he'd still get the 270 and be able to be a 76er or another team if he wanted to. That would probably be the most interesting option. And, he would need cooperation from a whole bunch of parties. Option 5, declines to sign his option with Brooklyn and works out a straight sign and trade. So says, I'm a free agent. I'm walking unless you pay me, or unless you trade me. And the Nets have to do a trade. And in this case, it maybe would be Simmons, Bobby suggests maybe Matisse Thybulle, maybe draft kicks, whatever, but then it hard caps them. So, I know it doesn't have to do with where the Nets are in the standings, but just thought we'd go over this situation. But really, Bontemps, the Nets can't really do anything. Their hope at this point is that everybody gets healthy and happy, right?
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN Plus right now.